Uh, Good evening. Welcome to AMA's Healthcare Week on Wellness Through Management. I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of Ahmedabad Management Association. I would like to request Mr. Padmin Boj, Corporate Advisor and member of AMS Governing Council, to take it forward and share more details about today's program, and welcome Professor Sudhir Jain, Director of Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mukund, and a very good evening to all of you. Welcome to the Ahmedabad Management Association, and particularly the AMA Week on healthcare, that is wellness through management. As we all know, Ahmedabad Management Association has always been active and proactive in organizing such kind of programs.
Management training. Management techniques.
Somebody needs to mute. There is some disturbance coming. Anyway, so welcome once again. And we are fortunate, as I was talking to Professor Sudhir Jain, to have such learned and expert speakers in our week, and that makes a lot of difference. No, we are, as we all know, we are passing through a challenging times, a challenge which we have not seen before, and we don't want to see it again, let me say. A challenge which is related to the health. It's a pandemic. It's related to the health. So what does management have to do with it? Well, management has to be there everywhere. In army also, there is a strategic management. In education institute also, there is a management. Professor Sudhir Jain knows much better than that. Yes, academic content is there, but it is the management, managing well, which makes a difference. In this pandemic, in this challenging time, while the healthcare facilities, the healthcare stakeholders are trying their best to come out with the solutions. But considering the scale, the complexity of the situation and the time, what is really required is to spread the right kind of literacy towards the healthcare, literacy towards the health. And managing the society, managing the world as a whole, whether it is industry, whether it's a corporate, whether it is a leisure industry, or whether it's an academic institute. So what AMA is proposing is to spread what we call as a health literacy among the people, among the society, among all the strata of the life, and making people aware how we can manage the situation which is there. A lot of things have to be done by the people and the society themselves. And that is the basic focus of this healthcare week. As we are just discussing, today is the second day of this healthcare week. And we are extremely fortunate to have Dr. Professor Sudhir Jain with us as the speaker. I have a great pleasure in introducing Dr. Of course, he doesn't need an introduction. He is one of the most known name, but it's a great pleasure to introduce Professor Dr. Sudhir Jain. Dr. Sudhir Jain is a founder director of IIT Gandhinagar. In fact, since 2009, he has been with the IIT Gandhinagar, and it's a hallmark of the person that he has been there. He has really developed. No, when IIT Gandhinagar was established, Gandhinagar is a small place in the map of the India, and IIT was set up. And now IIT Gandhinagar is one of the most premier IITs among all the IITs in India. An internationally reputed scholar of earthquake engineering, is recognized as one of the most dynamic educators in India. This is his third term. This is his third 5-year term as a director of IIT Gandhinagar. Earlier, he was with IIT Kanpur for almost 3 decades, from 1984 to 2019. Essentially, in terms of academics, his bachelor degree is in civil engineering from the University of Roorkee, what is now IIT Roorkee. He has a master's and PhD from the California Institute of Technology. Sir, I have privilege to visit that university in California, more than once because I have been going there as a part of my some project assignment. So I have a great opportunity to say. So when I read this, I was so happy. He served as the president of the International Association of Earthquake Engineering during 2014 to 2018. As we earlier said, he is one of the experts in the field of earthquake science. He was elected fellow of the Indian National Academy of Engineering in the year 2013. And we were also proud when Government of India and the President of India conferred the Padma Shri Award in the year 2020. It was a proud feeling and we were so happy, very deserving thing. Professor Jain has been elected as an international member of the United States National Academy of Engineering, what is called as NAE, in the year 2021. Many more credentials in his name, but he is a modest and we would like to stop here. Rather, we listen to him in a topic which is again something very different. Managing COVID-19 on campus. We know during this pandemic, without giving name, we know many of the institutions, including some institutions where I'm associated, face these issues, particularly campuses where there are residential premises, residential facilities. So managing COVID-19 on campus and learning from the innovative practices of managing COVID-19 of IIT Gandhinagar for other education institutions and of course for all of us. So may I now request Dr. Professor Sudhir Jain to give lecture. Sir, we have about 1 hour time to our credit. And if the time permits and as per your convenience, we may take a couple of questions also later on if there are questions. Right, sir? So, yeah. Professor Sudhir Jain, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Butsab. Thank you to Ahmedabad Management Association for giving me this opportunity to share what and how we handled the COVID situation in last 16 months. The title that was given to me said, Managing COVID-19 on Campus, Learning from the Innovative Practices of IIT Gandhinagar for Educational Institutions. So before I jump into what we did or how we did things, I think it is good to first tell you a little bit about the institute, how we like to imagine the institute, how we have been operating, how we manage the institute. So I will first give a little bit of introduction of the culture of excellence that we have tried to build over the years. Then I will go into the COVID crisis, the health crisis, the managing the crisis. And then towards the end, I will share some interesting educational opportunities that came because of the COVID. We fondly say that crisis has to be handled at 2 levels. One is to minimize the damage, but also at second level is to also seize the opportunities that might come across as a result of the crisis. So I will share both of those. We are a 13-year-old college, about 1,800 students. Interesting thing is almost 30% of our students are PhD students. And only 44% students are undergraduates. We have the standard 6 disciplines of undergraduate programs. We have number of PhD master's program. What is interesting is that 34% of our master's and PhD students are women. And we have students from 29 states and union territories in the country. We are fully diverse and represented by the whole country. And we started thinking that we need to create a different IIT. We need to design an IIT which is going to be a pride for the country. And the key ideas there were students first, the priority to the students. Recruitment of quality faculty, a lot of interdisciplinarity, critical thinking and liberal arts, project-oriented learning, internationalization, and social engagement. These are the keywords around which we have designed the institute. We were very particular that we must build best-in-class pedagogy, which means project-oriented learning, the hands-on learning, learning by doing, and a lot of humanities courses, a lot of breadth to the students. We start our BTech program with a 5-week foundation program, where for 5 weeks we don't teach any classes. We run a 5-week camp-like thing starting at 6:30 in the morning, goes up to 9:30 in the night. focusing on 5 themes of creativity, ethics, physical fitness, communication skills, teamwork, and social engagement, where the students might go and clean some of the dirty streets in the city, or may cook food or wash dishes in the hostel, or may learn dancing or kite flying or whatever. And every day, twice in the day, morning 6:30 and evening 6:30, they have to be in the playground. Idea is to detoxify them from coaching culture, from cramming, and just to let them become a little bit more comfortable, more relaxed. One of our very successful program is what is we called as Explorer Fellowship, where we challenge our students to explore India on an extremely low budget. We give them 38,000 rupees over 42 days, travel, boarding, lodging, sightseeing, everything. No air-conditioned train, no aircraft. They must go to North India, South India, Northeast India, and they must get a sense of what is India like and live on a budget of a very, very low cost budget. Imagine 900 rupees per day for accommodation, food, train ticket, and everything. These have been life transforming experiences for our students. For us, there is no mechanical engineering building. There is no mechanical engineering faculty who will only teach mechanical engineering courses. Any faculty can teach any course. Any faculty can guide any student. We have no separate buildings, no separate laboratories. 14% of our PhD students, PhD supervisor is not in their discipline. So electrical engineering student is doing PhD with a mechanical engineering teacher. That is the kind of culture that we have built, because that is how we think that interesting research will happen only when people work outside the comfort zone. We are very strong on globalization. 40% of our students experience traveling outside India at least once during their studies. 35% of our PhD students would have spent one semester outside India before they graduate. 80% of our students would have traveled outside India, and so on and so forth. We are very focused on high quality faculty recruitment. 60% of faculty have PhD from outside. 85% faculty have experience outside, means either degree or after the degree they have done something. We have almost 5% full-time international faculty, not of Indian origin. That is how we have built a faculty. Just to give a sense of what our undergraduates do, 38% of our undergraduate alumni have gone for higher studies, 8% have gone for PhD studies, and 7% of them have tried a startup or some sort of an entrepreneurship. The social engagement has been one of our very, very strong commitment. In fact, there is a IIT Council, which consists of all IITs, chaired by the Minister of Education of the country, which in 2013 passed a resolution that all other IITs should follow what IIT Gandhinagar does. And this is reflected in a number of ways. For example, we are very particular about housing to the construction workers, amenities to the construction workers, welfare schemes for the contract workers, a lot of engagement with construction workers' children, grassroots entrepreneurship in neighboring villages, and very, very deep engagement with the villagers. This is the type of workers' housing that every contractor has to build. Otherwise, they have to pay 10,000 rupees per day of fine if they don't build this kind of a housing. It has electricity, it has gas connection, it has water, sewage, toilets. This is a little school for children of underprivileged construction workers that our undergraduate students run. This teacher that you're seeing here, there are 2 teachers, and they are entirely, this entire informal school is run by the students. They are the ones who worry about hiring the teacher, fixing their salaries, and things like that. These are certain social activities that our students do with these children, celebrating events, celebrating festivals, birthdays, things like that. This is a IIT Gandhinagar doctor on the left side running a little clinic in the neighboring village. And on the front, in the back, you will see a nursing staff sitting there. So we run a little medical camp kind of thing in the neighboring villages to provide certain type of help to the villages. We have global ambitions. We want to be the best in the world. We want to be amongst the best in the world. We want to give India the best universities that India aspires for. And in the process, we have built a public-private partnership model where we believe that the government of India pays for the bills, for the electricity, for the salaries, but the philanthropy pays for the excellence. We have so far raised almost 90 crore rupees of donation monies by naming of buildings, naming of laboratories, faculty chairs, scholarships. Our 2020-21, even though it was a pandemic year and fundraising was very adversely affected, still we were able to raise 16% equal to the 16% of our annual operating expenses through the philanthropic money. Our alumni are young. The first students graduated only in 2012. They don't have much wealth, but we encourage them to give very small money. So 55% of our alumni have made a small donation, average maybe 3,000-4,000 rupees only. But idea is to give them a sense of ownership of the school, because this is also a way for us to see whether our alumni are happy with us or unhappy with us. Because if we have not treated our students well, they will not be willing to give a donation. Already 16 students, alumni of ours, have endowed scholarships of 1 lakh rupees each in the institute, which is very, very creditable for young alumni who have just gone out of the college. We have built a 400-acre campus, 3 kilometers of riverfront. We received a lot of awards and prizes for this campus for being a very green campus. It's a beautiful campus. The water you are seeing in Sabarmati is a real water. It is not a photoshopped water. I will invite anybody to come and visit us sometime as per convenience. So let's look at what happened when the COVID hit us around February, March 2020. And on 21st March 2020, I addressed the students and I said, today onwards, for the time being, I'm not going to use the slogan students first, because my students, my faculty, my staff, they hear this slogan from me very, very often, students first. I said, now for some foreseeable future, the slogan is safety first. And we have to change that. We have to change the mindset, and you better be prepared for that. That is how we started. We created a crisis management group under the chairmanship of one of my deans on March 13. The student leadership created a 24/7 control room on March 17th, where everybody, students, non-students, construction workers, outsourced workers, anybody could call 24/7 for any help, any guidance, any support. We created a special volunteer force on March 23rd, so that the community can be supported through volunteer effort. We created a medical care facility for COVID in May 2020. And in June 23, I created a COVID medical response team. I said, the crisis management group, the first team is worried about keeping people safe, ensuring the safety protocols, making sure that everybody is comfortable. But if somebody is infected, then the COVID medical response team that I created on June 23rd will take over. They will find out the doctor, they will find out the hospital, they will find out support system, they will make sure that the person is comfortable, the family is comfortable, whether counseling help is needed, whatever it is. And of course, a very strict enforcement throughout, because as I said, safety first, ruthless safety enforcement we have followed through and through. We have a very vibrant organic farm where we grow vegetables through community support, through community participation. And when lockdown happened, people could not go outside to buy vegetables. The special volunteer force was organizing these kind of activities where people could get vegetables. And those are the days, all of you remember, if we could get some onions, we were very happy. You know, if we could get some green vegetables, we were very happy. If you could get fruits, we were very, very happy. And that is when our organic farm challenged the community and said, look, you realize now the value of the fresh vegetables. Would you like to grow fresh vegetables in your kitchen garden, and we will provide you the seeds, we will provide you the help? And 100 families signed up and started to grow vegetables last year around this time, around May, June. So the idea was that let this crisis be also a scope for making significant improvements in the campus and build resilience for the long term. Everything that we do has been focused very strongly on social engagement. For us, IIT Gandhinagar community cannot be safe if our people are not safe, if the construction workers are not safe, if the maid servants are not safe, if the neighboring villagers are not safe. And therefore, we took a very, very broad picture of managing this crisis. By the end of 2020, by December end, we had only 40 cases of COVID positive. But there was so much that was happening because our idea was to keep social engagement as the priority for the institute. So on April 1, 2020, I created a Shramik Kalyan Samiti and gave them a budget. And we had 900 construction workers in 6 labor colonies. And I challenged my committee chaired by another dean to go to the construction workers colonies, build their morale, give them relief, give them materials, give them phone recharge, whatever needs to be given, but build their morale and make sure that they're comfortable, make sure that their morale is high, they are doing well. And they did a fantastic job in doing that. On May 7, I created a Padosi Gram Sahyog Samiti. We have 2 neighboring villages, Basan and Palaj, and we are concerned that those villagers might be uncomfortable. Many of them may have lost jobs. Some of them are daily wagers, some of them are auto rickshaw drivers or things like that. And we said, oh, what about them? Let us go around and look at them. And if we need to distribute rations, if we need to give them masks and things like that. So again, we gave a budget to Padosi Gram Sahyog Samiti, and they started to engage very deeply with the neighboring villagers. The student management was obviously one of the most challenging problems that we had. And in my address to the students on 21st March 2020, I told the students, this is your home, just like your parents' home. We are all a family. If you wish to stay, you stay. If you want to go home, you go home. We are with you through and through. If you decide to stay here, be ready for any difficulties that might come. But those difficulties will be shared by the faculty. Those will be shared by the director. If you are uncomfortable, we will be uncomfortable. Whatever we have, we will share together. And I'm very delighted that 25% of the entire student body actually was in the lockdown, in the campus, in the hostels. Our biggest challenge was that if we are going to have 500 students in the hostels, who is going to cook food if the mess workers cannot come? We are talking about March, before the lockdown, in fact, few days before before the lockdown. And we took a position that we will move the mess workers, the housekeeping staff, the bijli pani walas inside the hostel, give them a very generous special allowance and provide them the amenities, the mattresses, the air conditioning, and make them so comfortable that they would be happy to come here. And that is how we were assured that we will be taken care of as far as the amenities were concerned, and we moved a very large number of our workers inside the campus. I must say that we might be one of the very few institutions in the country where the students have never been told to go home, where the students have not been stopped to come back from home. Even as I speak to you today, a very large number of students are in the hostel. We keep allowing the students to go home when they want to, or they come back when they want to come back. That is how we manage the students. When the second wave came, that was really a very hard time for everybody, including for the campus. Just to give a sense to you, on March 1, we had 1 case of COVID positive, but by April 2020, April 22nd, we had 19 new cases in one day. In 24 hours, we had 19 new cases as against 1 case in March 1. Early 2021, we had almost 2,000 residents, 1,200 students, 800 other residents, faculty members, staff, their family members, and of course, there were lots of outsourced workers who come from the neighboring villages or nearby places. This is just to give a sense of the number of daily cases of COVID that were coming since May 2020 was the first case that was detected until very, very recently. This is the graph that gives you a sense of how we had fairly easy time in May, June, July, August, September last year. November, December, we had some cases, but real big crunch came around March and remained until mid-May. And that is when we decided that we need to create a COVID care facility inside the campus. Fortunately, we had this huge guest house facility that was under construction, and it was just about getting over. Its air conditioning had just been switched on, and lifts were just switched on, and we said we will convert that into COVID care facility. And we were able to create in February 2021 this facility, which could take up to 190 beds, almost 80 rooms, some of them double-seated, some of them 4-seated suites with attached bathrooms. We were able to create a proper facility there to take care of the people who were infected with basic health services. And that's what I will go into a little bit of detail here. The idea was that we want to reduce the spread of the virus. So if in a family, the husband is infected or the wife is infected, move that person immediately to this guest house facility. Let the remaining family members not worry about getting infection from the infected person. And that really worked extremely well. Moreover, we felt that things like oxygen concentrators, cylinders, they will be in short supply. Now, if we have lots of people at one location, very few cylinders, very few concentrators will be good enough to take care of the requirements. We would be able to handle less severe cases here, and only if very serious cases come, they will be sent to the hospitals. We were able to provide 24/7 nursing staff and ambulance. I must say that out of 242 patients that we handled in the COVID care facility between February and May, 6% of them had to be sent to the hospitals in the city. And this 6% plus another 4%, almost 10%, about 25 to 30 people needed oxygen support of some kind or the other during the stay in the COVID care facility. We organized the facility around two aspects: the medical aspect, wherein you worry about the medicines, the temperature monitoring, the oxygen concentrator, cylinders, systems for RT-PCR testing. We had two nursing staff providing 24/7 coverage. One physician was on rounds, and second physician was available around the on remote consultations. We had a very strong counseling opportunity to ensure that the patients, the medical staff, their families, everybody could access the counseling service. We had a 24-hour ambulance on call, and critical patients we were able to send to the hospitals. This was the medical side of it. We also needed to worry about the administrative side of it. If you are putting 100 people there in a facility, you need a lot of infrastructure. You need housekeeping, you need somebody to clean things, you need food supply in a timely manner, you need laundry, waste disposal, and all of that stuff. At one time, at the peak, we had 21 staff members managing this facility. That included medical staff as well as administrative staff. But the important thing is that we did not have 21 persons throughout. The numbers we kept adding as the situation arose, one. And second, we did not recruit staff separately for this. We were able to reposition our staff who were otherwise available in the institute. For example, if the classrooms are not running and there is a staff that is meant to run the classrooms, we were able to reallocate them to work in the COVID care facility for administrative purposes, for supporting purposes. For example, the sports instructors, there's no sports activities during those peak second wave time. So the sports instructors, and there were many, many other people who were not having enough work because of the very peculiar situation, and we were able to mobilize them in a very constructive manner to help us in managing this entire facility. We built protocols, detailed protocols. How will we manage the infrastructure? How would we ensure the food supply? How will we do the waste management? How will we do the medical services, and so on and so forth? It needed a little bit but then all of that we did as we learned. All of that we did not know to begin with. What you are seeing here in the picture is this young man bringing food to the students, to the patients. He has a stick in his hand. Using that stick, he's calling the bell so that he doesn't touch the bell. And he's putting the food on a chair outside the room. And the instruction was that after the bell rings, after about 30 seconds only, the patient will open the door to pick up the food while the worker will stay away and see that the food has been picked, because sometimes the patient might be sleeping and may not know that the food is there. So we needed to build our own protocols, our own systems to make sure that our workers are safe, the people providing support are safe. We decided that the scope of the community that we will serve will be as inclusive as possible. It is not only for the students and for the employees, it is also for the outsourced workers. It is also for their families. For example, we had somebody, one of our outsourced workers, we got a call saying that his brother was in the village, was infected and having low oxygen. And we immediately moved him into the COVID care facility of the institute. Fortunately, he did well with oxygen support, and we did not have to send him to hospital, and he recovered, and they were very grateful. The family was very, very grateful. As I said to you, we had 190 bed capacity in the guest house, but we had contingency plans. We did not know how many people will be there eventually. We had contingency plans that we had some big halls, meeting rooms in the guest house. We will convert them into dormitories. We had also prepared hostel blocks in case there is overflow from the guest house. We will be able to use that. But the idea was to be very, very inclusive, get as many people supported as possible within whatever limitations we had. Just to give a sense to you, at the institute, almost 40% people infected were students, plus some students are married, their family members. 40% are staff, faculty families, and then about 18 or 20% were the outsourced workers and families. And we never looked at outsourced staff as a separate community for all such purposes. Just to give a sense to you, we had 248 people treated in this facility. Out of which 94% patients recovered without hospitalization. 6% people needed to be sent to hospital. 1% passed away in the hospital out of those 16 people. At the peak time, there were 95 patients in the COVID care facility. And by May 18, we had no patients, and we were able to feel a bit of relief that, all right, we have perhaps come out. So this is just a graph that shows you how the numbers are going up and down. And you can imagine that when we were at 95, we had no idea that the graph will go down next day onwards. In fact, when it started to go for next 2-3 days, we were thinking that maybe it will again go back. And we were really worried about whether we will be needing 190 beds or even more. So that is how the numbers showed up at the institute. This is a graph showing various activities, various timelines. I don't think I will spend time on it. But we received extremely good response. We received a lot of emails from students, from parents of the students. For example, parents of a student writing that we thank you from the bottom of our heart for taking his care more than what we could have done during this time. We will feel very proud that our child is studying in such an institute where mentors are like his own parents. And many such comments came. Somebody, a faculty spouse, wrote that the management operations facilities were as good as they can get for cases such as mine. It is indeed a privilege to be part of this wonderful community. And many people started writing saying, we have benefited from this facility. Can we come back and help you in running this facility? Fortunately, we did not need to do that. So our contention is that what we did was not a rocket science. What we did was a very normal thing. All it needed was a little teamwork. All it needed was a little bit of ownership by the community. Because imagine now, you are providing support to infected people using the engagement of other community members who themselves are worried about their own safety. And all of that will happen if there is a trust, if there is a confidence that nothing will happen to me, but if something happens to me, somebody will take care of me. We believe that this could have been done. This can be done in many institutions, because most institutions have guest houses where there is no occupancy because of the traveling. Nobody's traveling. Mostly these guest houses have private toilets. Quite often they have air conditioning, which is what is very nice for creating an isolation facility. They also have some physical supply chain, human infrastructure for running the guest house. So there is a food arrangement. There are many other arrangements. Nevertheless, if there is no guest house, there is always halls, classrooms, recreation centers, schools, many places. And I believe that this is something that community level can be done. And I feel, in fact, what we did somewhere here, that we actually issued a white paper on all this experience. It is available on our website, and all the details of whatever we did, various protocols, various standard operating procedures, all of those were written in that. If an outsourced worker comes, how will the protocol be to handle? If a maid servant of the community family comes seeking help, how will that maid servant be handled? All of that was written, for example. So I would say this white paper received very, very good response. A lot of people appreciated what we did, and we felt that it was a good effort that helped us to not only remain safe, but also it reduced the burden on the city's health infrastructure. We did not have to send as many people to the hospitals as would have been required if we had not created this facility. So I would say not only it kept our community safe, but it also helped the city infrastructure to some extent. Now, let me share with you the third part of my presentation today, where I want to share with you how we have leveraged this situation for the educational thing. For example, in March, when the pandemic hit in 2020, we said we will do the summer vacation first. So our summer vacation would have been May and June and July. We said, no, our summer vacation starts in March, and we will first do the summer vacation and we'll do the semester later, remaining semester later. Why? Because that will help us prepare our faculty and our students. So we provided a lot of devices, tablets to faculty, training to the faculty, experiences sharing by the faculty to do online classes, because faculty had no experience of teaching online classes. We reached out to our students, understood who all needed help financially to buy laptops. We gave a lot of students standard 40,000 rupee grant to their bank accounts so that they can buy laptops. We said, we will give you 40,000 rupees. And if you want to buy more expensive laptop, you are welcome to buy it. We are not asking for a bank for a receipt. We are not asking for any evidence that you have spent 40,000 rupees. We also, early April, we also decided that the online courses run by companies like Coursera or edX or NPTEL in India, students can learn those courses and claim credit for it. And we also reviewed certain MOOCs courses and identified 180 courses. We said, if you do any of these 180 courses, you don't need any further permissions. We will give you credits. I must say that 35% of our undergraduates, 1/3 of our undergraduates, and 18% of our master's students claimed credits through MOOCs courses in summer of 2020, because they were sitting at home, they were sitting in the hostels, they were having free time, and they were able to learn using MOOCs courses and claim credit. 1,000 plus, more than 1,000 MOOCs courses were credited, and very high level of student satisfaction. The students learned, and it added to our purpose that students must learn to learn. They should be able to learn without the teacher, without the help of us. Last year, around this time, May, June, we were worried about our students, the job situation, and we said the students might not have the opportunities for going overseas for higher education. They might not have jobs joining. The companies might say, okay, you come in December to join, or you may come in April to join. And therefore, we decided, how do we support our students? Because to us, students are very, very important component of the institute. We therefore created two interesting things. We said, any student who's graduating in summer of 2020, we will admit them directly into a postgraduate diploma program of 1 year, so that 1 year they can study and then they can join their job, or they can go to foreign countries or other universities for higher studies. And after 1 year, if they want, they can convert that 1 year diploma into a master's or a PhD program, so that the students were assured that they have something to do. We also created a Sabarmati Research Fellowship, that after your graduation from IIT Gandhinagar, you can work with any professor of the institute, and we will give you some money, we will give you all the facilities, and you can do some research for 1 year. And after that 1 year, you can decide whether you want to do PhD here, or you want to go elsewhere, or you want to take a job. No obligation of any kind. And both of these programs were very, very successful. Many students benefited from it. The curriculum created a very good opportunity, because we are now suddenly moving from physical classroom to digital classroom. And we thought that this is something which is providing a very different platform for teaching and collaboration. But it needed mindset shift. It needed teachers and the students to understand what it was. And we said this is an opportunity for us to push for learning to learn, because we don't want our students to just cram what teacher is saying, but they must learn so that they can keep learning all their life. And this gave us a very interesting opportunity. We had new BTech students that are typically admitted in July in every IIT, because the joint entrance examination was delayed. The new batch could only join in mid-November in every IIT. And the question was, we have typically 2 semesters in a year. The question was, do we run now a semester for these students which is not synchronous with the rest of the student semesters? Because other student semesters were running July to December and January to April. We said, no, let's use this opportunity. Remember, IIT system has a lot of autonomy. We are allowed to design our curriculum. We are allowed to set our own timetable. We are allowed to create our own evaluation systems. And we said, let us take advantage of all those flexibilities, all those opportunities. And we redesigned the entire first year curriculum because of this very peculiar system. And instead of 2 semesters, we created a 3-term year so that they are aligned with the rest of the classes after 7 weeks. So they came in mid-November. By end of December, they finished first term of 7 weeks. And then from January onwards, they were with every other student, the same semester. We also decided that we will now change the courses that will be more amenable to online teaching. If you are teaching computer programming in a certain way in a physical classroom, we don't have to teach computer programming in the same way now in online teaching. We will have totally different computer programming course, which is more suitable for online teaching. So a lot of those innovations in the curriculum were done. We also saw a very interesting opportunity, and this is something that we are very proud of. We said, look, we are doing online teaching. The teacher is sitting in IIT Gandhinagar campus, the student sitting in any part of India. Some of them are in the campus, but most of them all over the country. We said, if that is so, what stops us from teaching the courses through people sitting all over the world? Why people have to sit only in IIT Gandhinagar? And we challenged ourselves that we will have every semester at least 10 courses taught by faculty outside the country. That was a simple question that I raised to my senior colleagues, and they delivered me more. I asked them 10 courses per semester, and they gave me 22 courses over 2 semesters taught by faculty from Australia, Brazil, Germany, Japan, Mexico, Portugal, Singapore, Switzerland, Turkey, UK, USA. We had people from around the world teaching proper formal courses to our students in the last 2 semesters, because we said this will add the range of courses. This will add a different type of expertise. This will add a lot of diversity to the students' learning experiences. And I must say, this has been very, very successful. Very recently, one of the IIT directors has been talking to me saying, could we open these courses to the students of that IIT, for example? So there could be many, many opportunities. These courses need not be only credited by our students. They can be credited by students of other institutions as well. This has been a very interesting thing. Another very big opportunity that arose to us was the faculty recruitment. We are very fussy about faculty recruitment. For us, quality of faculty is the most important thing that goes into building an institution. And we said, look, many institutions in the country will have their recruitment processes disrupted because of COVID. And many of the young people in US and Europe who would have stayed back there would not find that many opportunities, because even American universities were going through a lot of hardships of various kinds. And we said, wow, this is a time for us to recruit faculty. And I must say that we have recruited a record number of top quality faculty in last 1 year. We have had the most successful faculty recruitment process that has gone on in our 13 years history, has been in last 12, 13 months. We also said another interesting opportunity. Some of our best young men and women after their PhD, they work as a postdoctoral researchers in best American universities, best European universities, in Japan, in Korea, many places. And we said, wait, these young people are not going to get those opportunities outside India. Can we bring them here to IIT Gandhinagar? We created 2 very interesting opportunities. One, we called it Early Career Fellowship, where we said we will give them double the salary that a postdoctoral fellow otherwise would get at IIT Gandhinagar. Because the idea was that this young man or woman would have gone to America, would have gone to Europe, would have saved some money, let him or her save money sitting at IIT Gandhinagar and do top quality research. We also created another scheme. We called it 50-50 scheme, where we said the faculty member brings 50% of the salary from their own research grants, and remaining 50% IIT Gandhinagar will cover. And what it did was that it enabled us to bring exceptional candidates with doctoral degrees from all over the country to do very high impact research. And our hope is that we are preparing them for faculty positions in the country. We hope we will train them that they will become top-notch faculty candidates in the country. And I must say that as I speak to you today, we have had the largest number of postdoctoral research fellows in the institute than we ever had. We really added very large number of postdoctoral fellows in last 1 year because of these opportunities. We also were very concerned throughout for the social consciousness, because social consciousness is not only good for the society, not only good for the people that are benefiting from it, but also it is a part of the educational experience of our students. Our students must graduate from IIT Gandhinagar thinking about the poorest of the countrymen and women. They must think that they have to solve the problems of the country. They must think that there is much more to life than making money. There is much more to life than getting a high-paying job. And to us, this became again a very important opportunity to sensitize our students. What you're seeing is here is a young student distributing face masks in the construction workers colony. So a lot of our students got engaged in various activities. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have tried to be a little faster so that there is a room for some question answers. If there are question answers, very good. Otherwise, I will take the remaining part of my time to show a few pictures of the campus, because many of you may not have had a chance to be in the campus. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank Professor Dr. Sudhir Jain for accepting our invitation from Ahmedabad Management Association and to deliver very, what we say, enlightening speech and presentation. It was a great learning for all of us, and I am sure the education institution will particularly have a great learning from the exercise done by the IIT Gandhinagar over a period of time. Great learning of how to manage a situation which was never there before, utilizing their own resources, utilizing the resources from the other sources, and of course, their goodwill has helped them a lot. Fund management, transparent management helps them a lot. I remember he mentioning that fundraising earlier was almost 16% of IIT Gandhinagar's annual budget. Now, this is not a small thing. This is not a small thing, as we all know. So thank you, sir, for being with us. And I would also like to thank all the participants who are directly associated in this particular webinar, as well everybody who is associated in the YouTube of this. There are very many number of people who are with the YouTube also. And of course, thanks the AMA team for making this happen. Mr. Mukund, over to you for the last word.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today, Professor Sudhir Jain and all participants. And thank you so much, Buj sir.